Hey everybody, this is Jonathan with High Flow Systems. Today we are going to do an installation video of our Honda GX630 and 690 remote start. You're going to need a couple of basic tools for this. You're going to need a screwdriver, Phillips head. You're going to need a ratchet, a 12mm socket, and a 10mm socket, as well as a pair of pliers. Pliers don't have to be anything special. The only thing it's going to be used for is to install one ground wire just with a pinch style connector. Standard pliers will be just fine for that. We're going to start with the part of this that's going to be the most difficult. It's hooking up the fuel solenoid. To do that, you have to remove the red cover or black cover, whatever may be the case with your motor. 2 Phillips head screws on the front, as well as 10mm bolts. There'll be 4 of these. 2 top corners right here, 2 bottom corners down below. When you're doing all this, make sure you do have the battery disconnected. We do have this one disconnected. Battery leads are up here. This red cover, it's going to slide off. There's one little hook on the back side of this shroud. It's hooked over the fuel line. Be a little conscious of that as you go back together. Then on this remote start, the yellow wire is going to connect to the fuel solenoid. There's a grommet on the back side of the switch where the wiring harness itself comes through into the main housing of the motor. Be a little bit careful with this tab. Sometimes you have to bend it just a little bit to get everything straightened out, and poke this through. Into the main housing. Then we're going to come back around to the front side, and the fuel solenoid is right here. So we're going to pull this wire up into the housing. We're going to pull the existing fuel solenoid wire off, connect the remote start fuel solenoid, and then on the piggyback portion of this connector, we're going to connect the original wire back. Now, be careful, because these can be a little difficult, especially if it's an older machine. Make sure that it's latched on there. Give it a little tug just to make sure that it pulls in there and stays together. Now, in the interest of just controlling the wires, there is on top of this ignition coil pack a little zip tie that's got a tab where you can release it. Just push the tab up, release. Then I'll lay the yellow wire inside there just to give it a point of attachment inside this housing to make sure that it does not end up getting pulled out easily or anything like that. Of course, it's probably best if you don't take this thing completely loose, because there we go. Slide back together. Just push that through tight on that wire. And pull around to the the side of the motor. This is going to leave 4 wires left. The white wire, this is going to be the trigger wire for the starter solenoid. It's going to install in the same manner that the fuel solenoid wire did. Now, this one I can show you a little bit better how this goes together. And see, that one's a little bit loose. So what I will actually do is put that together, then take the pliers and not go crazy, but just a little squeeze, just to bend this connector back in to hold securely, and then slide it back onto the starter solenoid. Then the next wire will be this blue wire with a tap splice connector. This can be installed in several locations. However, usually the easiest location is right here in this section of the harness. You lay the wire inside this connector, then you just take the pliers and squeeze. The next step will be your power and your ground wire. And position on the ground wire can vary anywhere that's a good ground on the engine block. Not all machines are going to have this, but typically we ground our wiring harness to the bottom of the block right there. So that's where I'm going to hook this ground up at. Once again, the battery is disconnected during this portion of it. You'll get some nice fireworks if you don't. I like to pull the main cable off and put this in there behind it, just because this is not quite as heavy of a cable as the original cable. This is supplying power to the main box. And this is where you use the 12mm. Tighten that up right there. Then we are going to swap over to the 10mm to ground it. Chase this wire kind of down in behind the rest of the harness. Do recommend kind of zip tying all this up when you're done, just to make everything as neat and clean as possible. But throw your ground wire in there. Alright, we'll pull the cover back up over this battery wire right here. The actual installation at this point is complete. Now, generally, zip tie the wires in here or something, and then you can also neaten that up any way you want to. At this point, you're at a point where you can actually test to make sure everything's working properly. When you push the on-off button, you'll hear this fuel solenoid click, just like you do when you turn the switch on and off. Once you have confirmed that's working, and don't recommend cranking it at this point, pop that on, watch the hook up there, sitting with the fuel line. Phillips head screws back in. Bolts. I generally leave these a little bit loose until I get all 4 of them in. A new motor, you're not going to see as much having to push on this shroud, but it is possible on an older motor that you have to push around just a little bit to make everything go back together the way it should. Alright, now this remote start operates completely independently of the actual switch at this point. The switch can be off and everything still works just like normal. The switch will also completely override the remote, and you don't have to have any two totally separate systems for the situations where you need to use one as a backup. Everything else is all just a part of your normal package. There is a 10 amp fuse inside the box. Do be mindful of that if anything's ever not working. On-off switch for it. These things will pull a small amount of current if left on. Could eventually run a battery dead, but won't happen overnight. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. Again, that's the high flow systems, GX630 and 690.